Welcome to today's City Council meeting. Our meetings are public and you are welcome to join us in person or by watching from the Council's agenda page, Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable. This is a work session meeting during which there is no public comment. Please join us tonight during our 7 p.m. formal meeting to share your comments. We, of course, welcome your feedback anytime by mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84114-5476, or by email at council.comments@slcgov.com, or via our 24-hour phone comment line, 801-535-7654. Written comments we receive on agenda topics are shared with council members and posted to our website, slccouncil.com. We will now begin our work session. The first item on our agenda is informational updates from the administration. At the table today, we'll have Mayor Mendenhall. Is the whole team joining us? No? All right, so I'm seeing Andrew Johnston joining us, and I also have Tony Milner and Michelle Hoon. I don't have your name on here.
I'm Katie Schnell.
Hi, Katie Schnell. So wonderful to meet you and excited to have you here.
Yes, so for those that I have, is that better? Now you can all hear me. Okay, great. I'm Katie Schnell. I'm Weston's executive assistant, who's the director of community outreach. And then I'm also the executive assistant to Jennifer Newell, who is the mayor's senior advisor for education. And I also manage the mayor's office ACE fund. We can go to our first slide. Great. So this is just a reminder that this is our webpage for residents to go and engage with the city. Next slide. We have, let's see, I think we can go to, is there a public land slide first? Perfect. So we have quite a few updates from public lands this week. First up is regarding Madsen Park. The work to update the North Temple Boulevard plan to keep Madsen Park in place continues and is scheduled for the Planning Commission on August 9th. With Glendale Regional Park, Public Lands just concluded a period of public engagement to determine how the public would like to see pickleball courts incorporated into the new Glendale Park site. The survey closed on August 6th, and Public Lands will be compiling an engagement report that will be posted on the project website by the end of this month. Regarding the Liberty Park Playground, Public Lands is asking the public to submit a drawing of their ideal playground with a short description of what makes their playground special. You can check out information on that contest on the community feedback page listed on our original slide. And the Making the Emerald Ribbon project is identifying assets around the Jordan River by asking the public to share their stories or favorite places around the Jordan River. This will inform the development of the master plan, which will work to preserve, restore, and activate the Jordan River. There's 8 focus groups regarding different subjects. These will be held starting tomorrow. Community members and city staff with subject matter expertise or experience have been invited to attend. Donner Park will have city staff doing intercept surveys on site soon, while Allen Park is also looking for community input on what the future of the park will look like. And they're asking the community to go to their website to give their feedback. The first part of that engagement will end in September, but there will be future opportunities to follow. And the Mayor's Office of Equity Inclusion and Public Lands are partnering together to host 3 workshops, one on August 24th, one on September 21st, and a tentative date in November. The workshops will discuss how we can make parks more accessible and what the current barriers are there. A survey will soon be open and available on that feedback page. Next slide, please. see, the West Side Art Project. Let's see, it looks like they are also doing engagement efforts with that around Partners in the Park.
I think there's actually a slide in there that's not in there. If you just back or go back one, I think. Now go forward two. Yeah, just skip to that. That's okay.
Okay,
Is that the right things?
I think so. Just the planning update as well. And sustainability.
Just go to that one.
Okay. Great. Well, we do have our August community office hours for the Mayor's Office Community Outreach Team. They continue to be good opportunities for the community to engage with the city and with the Mayor's Office. And I know the liaisons have been enjoying getting out to local businesses, parks, and events in their district. So you can see those listed there with the locations, dates, and times. And those are also listed on our website, the community outreach section of the Mayor's site. Next slide. Great. These are our August events. Some of them to highlight for you are this weekend we have Craft Lake City's DIY Festival coming up. Next Tuesday at the Northwest Rec Center is the next Partners in the Park event. And then the Kensington Street Festival is later this month on August 19th. Next slide, please. Yep, that concludes my portion, so I'll pass it over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. You can see on the first slide still high usage rate at the resource centers. The second piece is the encampment impact mitigation work this week at Liberty Park. I know Councilman Romano had an event this week, past week, excuse me, regarding Liberty Park and some of the issues happening there. Parks is working on a plan that we can share with you shortly about a bigger discussion about what will happen in the park to help with safety and security issues and also dealing with unsheltered homelessness there. 64 heart-tracked camps. You can see some new outreach engagements in 7 new camps, and then site rehabilitations with the Rapid Intervention Team. Library Square is a location for the Resource Fair this Friday, and then Kayak Court the following week on the Jordan River again. Next slide. And you can see some of this. I'll explain the part you can't see. So we wanted to make sure you were aware of other things happening in the system. So the state released their 5-year homelessness strategic plan. There's a link here, and we can share that with anybody in the public as well. It lays out the strategies for the entire state, both goals and how to get there. A lot of state work identified in that model. And then the next one down is the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness, our local entity here in this valley. They are working on a strategic plan that is based on the state plan with some local focus, obviously, and it also aligns with the national plan that the Biden administration has put forward, including funding, including there. And then this week on Thursday, the Utah Homelessness Council is set to review and vote on the winter services plan that was worked on this summertime by the Council of Governments and the Conference of Mayors, respectively. And so that you can see the details of that meeting there. The last piece is Outdoor Resource Center, Sanctioned Camp Pilot. I keep trying to find the right name for this, and I'm still struggling with it, so you'll bear with us. We have met internally multiple times. We are meeting with the state as well to flesh out what that will look like and get it done as quickly as possible. So we will have updates for you shortly as well on that. Any questions?
Council? All right, thank you both. All right, next we have an equity update. At the table, we have Roxana. And then I don't have, we met the other day, didn't we? What was, remind? So wonderful to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Can you hear me?
A little closer.
How about now?
Yes.
So let's see if we can have our PowerPoint. Today I am here to ask you to save the date for the Welcoming Week annual campaign. And basically what that is an annual campaign that celebrates the work of communities and partners and what they're doing to become more welcoming places for all, including immigrants. And this was first launched back in 2012 by Welcoming America, and I'm sure I've spoken about Welcoming America as a nonprofit that leads a movement of inclusive communities. If we can go to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit more about our participation over the years. We've been doing something with them since 2016, as far as I could find information. And then, so we are partnering with Salt Lake County Office of New Americans, and basically we plan and promote events all over the county and get together to promote them and share information. Once we have that calendar, we will be putting that in the SLC Gov website. And this year we're having some events of our own, so that's exciting. We will have a welcoming walk and a tree planting and dedication scheduled for the 14th. So we'll do a welcoming walk around Washington Square, and then Urban Forestry has will be picking a nice tree in addition to the forest here, the urban forest of the Washington Square, and we will dedicate it to Salt Lake City's immigrant and refugee population. And then Salt Lake Arts Council, they have a show that will be part of the celebration as well. And then we are also working with the Salt Lake County to host a public safety event for Afghan refugees, and that is through a grant that they provided. Next slide. I'll tell you about it. And Salma can tell you a little bit more about that event.
Dear council member, actually we have a lot of Afghan refugee family in Salt Lake City. They have a problem in the local law and also in the culture. We have some cases which the Afghan refugee family just follow their own culture, but find some problem, especially legal problem. For example, we had Afghan family with some basic culture they have, so the police got them and asked them some question and make problem. This is why we thought if we have just the information sharing session for them and just share some local law or some in emergency situation like fire situation, what they have to do. I believe not just Afghan family, more other refugee family have same problem. We just want to start with the Afghan refugee family and share some basic local law from the police department and fire department, and to help them increase their knowledge about the local law and what to do in the emergency situation. Yeah, there's a small budget from county, I think.
Yes, so the county is helping us out with some funds, a grant for that. And then and that will be part of Welcoming Week as well. And one way that we decided to help or to get the city employees involved is to ask them to fill out this postcard where they can share advice or any welcoming message for people who are arriving in Salt Lake, just to make them feel welcome. And that should do it. Any questions?
Can I get some of those cards? I would love to share.
Yes,
write
yes.
a few of those. And I know the county when they created this department. It's not a department, but this the county, when they created this department to welcome immigrants, and the office is under the mayor's office in the county. I don't remember the name, but one of their missions is to encourage people to vote. Are we also helping on that? Because it will be very important for us to encourage those residents to get registered if they can.
Yes. So unfortunately, the county Office of New Americans is the office of one. So he has reached out quite a bit, so we're working collaboratively, so not to I guess, to unite forces because it's the same audience, it's the same community. And we are having an event for Welcoming America where we will help, people apply for citizenship for free. There's about 60,000 folk in Utah who could become citizens, but for one reason or another, they don't have, they haven't gotten there. And then I know that voting goes along that as well. So that's definitely a partnership that we are working on in terms of education.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you both so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. All right, now for the main event, council friends. Time for us to go to item number 3, our CIP projects. At the table, we have Ben Ludke. I see we have Mary Beth Thompson in the room. I'm sure we will make her get up a few times during this. Anyone else joining you, Ben, or is it just us?
I think it's just me for now. If anybody needs funding logs, we have mini copies on the table in the corner. If it's all right, I thought it'd be helpful to start with the scenario that would fund the council's 7 priority projects that were identified at the last briefing. There are also a few pages of responses to your project-specific questions that we could go through if time allows, but I thought I'd start with the funding scenario. Okay. Can page 2 of the staff report be put up on the screen, specifically the table? That's the one. So a couple things about the scenario. It fully spends the $1.2 million that the council added to the CIP budget above what was recommended in the mayor's budget. The funding goes to all 7 projects. Note that the Livable Streets program was already recommended for funding, and this would add additional funding to it. The other 6 projects the council identified were not recommended for any funding. The scenario also does not shift funding away from any other project, and it would not require adding more funding to CIP in a later budget amendment. There are 2 projects which are combining CIP funding with funding from the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Bond. This is project number 22, Richmond Park Playground, and project number 27, the North Temple Arts and Tourism District improvements. So you'd be partially funding both of those projects with CIP, and then the first issuance of the Parks Bond would have additional funding for eligible components of both of those projects.
None of these totals are reflected in the log. This is completely separate, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There are also 2 projects that would be divided into phases. So project number 21, Rose Park Lane beautification, trail, and safety improvements. This is the $30,000 for 2 driver feedback speed signs. Later phases of that would return to the council in CIP if the applicant reapplies. The other project that would be phased is number 46, safety enhancements to west side of Foothill Drive. That would specifically be $170,000 for the 2500 East and Blaine Avenue, just that one intersection, and that's next to the elementary school. Another note on the North Temple Arts and Tourism District. Since it's partially funded, it doesn't have specific locations or specific amenities that would go there. It has these broad categories like public art, pedestrian safety, traffic calming, adding some trees and landscaping, but we don't have cost estimates because we don't have specific locations where those amenities would go. So the current amount in this scenario it would be $69,000 for design, public outreach, so that we would know the cost estimates. But then it has another $123,000 to actually construct those to be determined improvements, and then whatever the bond would be able to contribute that's eligible. So that's how this one would be packaged. There are two projects that would be fully funded from CIP. Number 23, Sugar House Safe Side Streets Part 2. That's $150,000 to construct the traffic calming improvements that were designed and tested in Part 1. And number 57 would also be fully funded, the Ensign Peak Nature Park improvements. And then for Livable Streets, the traffic calming program, you're adding, under the scenario, adding $294,000. Each of the zones that are identified in the program, they have a cost between $250,000 to $500,000. It depends on if it's a large or a smaller zone. So this additional $294,000 would be enough to do an additional smaller zone in the program. So that's it for my overview of the scenario. This is a starting point. You could certainly change it. Are there any questions on this?
Will you recap, Madam Chair, will you recap that in this scenario, what happens in this scenario? We don't need to add additional, that uses the money that we had.
It fully uses the money you added to CIP above what the mayor recommended, and it leaves no money on the table. It spends all of the 1.2 million.
Have we done, so I did the calculations, and Richmond Park would be getting approximately 40% of what they asked. North Temple would be about 38% of what they asked. And then the West Side Foothill Drive would be about 34% of what was asked. Have we done any research to find out if funding at those levels creates any sort of momentum? Like, is there a third of the west side, the West Foothill traffic calming that makes sense at this point? Is this us kind of committing ourselves to finishing the job next year?
Yeah, and this is probably, they had it in different phases, and there's a couple different intersections there. This was probably the most problematic one, and that 170 covered that specific intersection. There were other smaller ones that were also added, but this was the most problematic one. So
I like what we're doing here, and I think, Chris, you're responsible for a lot of this legwork, and so thank you for attempting to spread the peanut butter. But we do have two that are at 100%, and then three that are at lower. And so while I'm not trying to deprive anyone else of anything, if you would need more to make an impact, like, we certainly can spread the peanut butter a little differently if we need to. Like, have we asked the departments that would be getting this if these allocations make a significant impact towards their goals?
I think any money is making a significant impact.
Touche.
There's also the CIP cost overrun account. So if any project in CIP goes a little bit over budget, then the administration can pull from that cost overrun account without coming back to the council in a budget amendment, which is a longer process. And at that point, the bid might no longer hold, and they'd have to go back out, and prices could go up again. There's not a commitment or like an implied commitment that things that are not funded would come back and receive funding in the future. A lot of these applications would need to reapply for CIP and go through the same open and competitive process with all the other competing projects in the next cycle.
Council people, anyone else have any feedback? It looks like we've got some.
I appreciate
I want to give them a chance to get their deliberations done. Pui, Wharton, do we have any feedback? You're feeling at peace with things?
Madam Chair?
Oh, yes. Did not.
I just wanted to mention, yeah, thanks. I just wanted to mention that I feel like I could support this. It doesn't entirely get to my overarching policy goal of getting livable streets and traffic calming to be less politically decided and more decided based on data and what parts there's actually the higher need for. And I'm excited for when we can have that discussion with Transportation Division and figure out exactly how that first ranking was done, how often we should update it, what are the parameters that we want to put in. But I would like to continue to move towards where it's not the council through a political process deciding which neighborhoods get traffic calming, and it's more trained staff through a data-driven process deciding which neighborhood get the traffic calming. So while this does add some funding to the general Livable Streets program that I believe does that, or is our best chance at doing that, it does still have two that are sort of decided by us to get those funding. And I think I could get behind that this year, but I want us to continue moving towards a more data-driven process and a less political one.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I mean, we talked about this last time, and last time, I think that's something that I'm also very supportive of. I will be, maybe there is a legislative intent on this, that in the category of traffic calming, that follows the data-driven approach the administration has invested. We invested as a city money to develop. So anytime that there is a CIP application and involves traffic calming, that it will follow the plan. And if not, it gets pushed back to areas that actually will have recognized to be the most needed ones. So I will be supportive of that, to include it there, so we actually set the expectations correctly for when we open CIP again later this year. So we need to make the change sooner rather than later, before applications are open. So I will be supportive of legislative intent on that.
Thank you.
Staff can draft that intent, so the council could adopt the intent at the same time you adopt the CIP funding next Tuesday. And Transportation has said they look forward to briefing the council on livable streets and welcome that policy discussion.
So if this is really happening, if this is the extent of our conversation, we are so far ahead of schedule. We really have nothing else to like.
Proof that
Do we want to talk about fireworks?
Your chairmanship is successful.
Okay. Ben, you just are that skillful at your job that you silenced 6 out of the 7 most nitpicky people in the city. Way to go. We didn't even ask Mary Beth to get up once. I feel like we're failing here. All right, thank you, Ben. I think you've accomplished, and thank you, Councilmember Wharton, for your leadership in helping to get some of those things navigated.
I do want to point out the questions you had about specific projects at the last briefing are on pages 2 through 5 of the staff report. And in particular, attachment 10, the public way concrete program, the 50/50 concrete program, there's some really good data and visualizations about utilization broken out by council district. Take a look at those. I can go through them now if you want, since we have time. I just wanted to highlight that since it was a point of interest last time.
Council, would you like to go through that now, or would you prefer to do it on your own? We literally are more than an hour. Like, we weren't even supposed to start this for another 15 minutes. Okay. All right, Ben, let's do it.
Can we get attachment 10 up on the big screen? And all of the data in the charts and the visuals is from 2020 to the present. So we're looking at about 3 years of this program. And again, it's the 50/50 program, where if you're a residential property owner, you split the cost equally with the city. This is different than the proactive concrete program, which is funded in CIP, where the city is going out and proactively making these improvements at the city's full cost. Commercial property owners pay the full cost of replacing and fixing the concrete in front of their properties. So in this, in the first chart, it has by council district the number of estimates that were sent. So when there is a problem with the concrete, they are first given an estimate. This is what we think it would cost in order to actually fix this. And then next to that is the column jobs completed, and the following column is the percent. So the jobs completed as a percent, the total number of estimates. As you can see, the highest percentage of jobs completed is District 4, which is at 50%. Most of the districts are about in the 40% range, and the lowest is District 1 at 21%. And you'll see this repeated in the other tables and charts where District 1 is often the lowest.
Ben, is there any way to determine if the number of estimates sent, well, no, because we're about, does it reflect accurately the rate of home ownership in each district? Like, it's easy to say, oh, there's 265 in District 3. That must be a reflection of like people being aware of this program or something. But does it correlate with home ownership or any other factors that we're aware of?
I don't think it correlates with home ownership because Districts 1 and 2 have some of the highest home ownership rates of all the council districts, and we're actually seeing lower participation rates in Districts 1 and 2. It looks like this is more closely correlated with household income.
Okay. I didn't want to jump to the
Yeah, I
conclusion.
chose to see the second table before I have some questions about this. So,
But, Madam Chair, Ben, maybe a question for the administration on this part, because when I was looking through this over the weekend, and I've also been, I've talked to a number of people about the 50/50 program and how they'll go out and get their own estimate, and it's far lower than what the city's estimate is. And sometimes I wonder how the city's contracting process works, and if bids are coming into the city that are much higher than what people would pay otherwise if they did it themselves. I've had this is just, people talking to people, said I sent out a bid and the bid came out at, half the price of the city's bid. So it was like, wait a second, I could just basically pay for the whole thing at my 50%. But when the city submitted the bid, it was 2x. Now, the truth probably lies in somewhere in the middle there, but how well that process works and the price that the actual resident has to pay for his 50% portion.
Let me take a stab, and the administration or Ben can correct me, but part of the issue historically has been that the city requires the use of bonded contractors, and there are not many, but it's very important with work in the public way that it be done to city standard. So that's the second part, is the city standard. Most of the time when you're getting a bid from a contractor, they're bidding at a lot of times at what they think would be good. It isn't done to city standards. And so that's the other thing that is the factor. So those two things, a lot of times people start out planning to do their own sidewalk, and then it turns out that that doesn't work because they have to get it done to city standards, and then the cost skyrockets. So there could be more to it than that. That's the part that I am familiar with.
Well, thank you.
This seems like a really blurry line to me, though. Like, we're responsible for 50% of the bill, but 100% of the snow shoveling, and we don't set the standards to which it can be repaired. Like, there does seem to be a little bit, for anyone in the city, a little bit of an incongruence here with our policy, and it doesn't really set well with me. I know we have a legislative intent around reviewing this.
The program was established so that, because in the city, 100% of the sidewalks are paid theoretically by the property owner that's abutting. So that was a requirement when the subdivisions were put in. So typically the city program has not gone in and put new sidewalks unless it's a CDBG area or a safe path to schools. So typically every property owner is responsible for their first sidewalk.
And ADA compliance doesn't factor into this? We don't have like a responsibility to make sure people can traverse the city?
The core development of the city was originally based in having sidewalks. And so typically we haven't done a lot of funding of except on a CDBG basis. So we have had very wealthy people come to the city to say that they would like sidewalk put in at 100% city expense, and the city has said no, that was an original requirement of the subdivision. So the 50/50 program was established to help reduce the cost to the property owners and only available for residential property. But I might have old information and these guys are
We have
gonna
new
help
friends
us.
at the table.
We may be able to inform the conversation a little bit. So to your question.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, JP Goetz with Public Services. The concrete program, the 50/50 program, we do in streets. So that's an in-house program. So our costs are pretty well fixed. And, you know,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Julie Crookston, also with Public Services. We only charge in the 50/50 program for the materials. We do not charge for any labor or equipment cost or anything additional to that. It is only 50% of the materials.
all right, so they are pretty well fixed for that. And the contractors out there may vary wildly. Your other question was
ADA.
ADA. We do have a proactive ADA program, that's ramps at intersections. So it doesn't necessarily apply to just straightaway sidewalks in front of folks' houses. So
It's
we wouldn't-
just the curb cuts at the
the curb cuts, correct?
Yes.
corners.
And that is fully city funded. That isn't assisted by the property owners.
And Madam Chair, just as clarification, this 50/50 it doesn't take any consideration on income levels. So anybody can apply for the 50/50, or, for the 50/50 program regardless. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we have no scholarship program or anything? Like,
And in the CDBG eligible areas, though, there is a sidewalk fund, is my understanding, and that is not a 50/50 share, that is 100% funded by the CDBG program. I don't know if that's in your area or not.
Yeah, and that's not administered by Public Services or streets.
Is this true, Ben? Did I make it up and it's not true anymore? It was true at one point.
It was true at one point. I don't think it's in the current 5-year plan for CDBG, but the new 5-year plan is going to be developed over the next 15 to 18 months. So if it's an interest of the council, there is an opportunity to make it a priority again and eligible for CDBG in the city.
Because for many years it was that you could get your sidewalk, not the initial sidewalk, but your sidewalk repaired and replaced in CDBG areas.
I think you bring up a great question about the equity side of the house. Of maybe there is a possibility of looking at funding at different income levels, different parts of that. Because you're right. I mean, it could be an expensive undertaking, especially if you have a larger sidewalk that needs repair, and you can't afford it. But you'd love to have your neighborhood would definitely like you to have it replaced.
Yeah,
So I think we should probably explore that at some later date.
I mean, this is an issue that we've seen quite a bit in my district, but not only in my district, but I've seen it a lot, where the 50% of the materials was still a lot for the neighbor, and there was no way around it. And then what I keep hearing from the neighbors is, I need to walk on the street because there is a foot, a foot tall high, step in the sidewalk, and we are in this pickle there where we cannot figure out how to solve it, and I feel like we need to figure out a way of finding the funds for some income levels in there. But yeah, I'm curious about the second table of this and see what what it gives us.
I share concerns with you across two nexuses, across the socioeconomic. I'd be curious to know of the jobs completed or the ones not completed. Was the motivation financial? Was it just that it was cumbersome and it fell off the radar? Why did we not complete that number of jobs? But then I know our original intention and maybe even our federal mandate is not ADA, but we have got to be cognizant that our neighbors who find themselves mobility impaired are highly dependent upon us to allow them to move in the city. And we have to have some kind of mobility focus on how we maintain these that maybe goes above and beyond a federalized standard. I know even like my kids just ride their scooters around, and in Rose Park we've got those beautiful historic trees that are just pushing it up, and I have had more skinned knees and, thank God no traumatic brain injuries yet, where like they go head over the handlebars, just a scooter. I can't imagine if we were actually relying on that mode to get us someplace, what it would be like trying to get around that block.
And I, also just not to associate, because we have a lot of people that are fixed income, have an older house, and it just in your state right there, and hey, they have these tripping hazards. So, but they're on a fixed income, then they're not gonna, they can't afford it. So, yeah, I think.
I can add a little bit of clarification for the difference between the jobs, the quotes requested and the jobs completed. We, as a streets division, don't turn anyone away. So whoever, if it wasn't completed, it was because the person requesting the quote decided not to pursue further.
Thank you.
I don't think we track why, but it is this, we never turn anyone away.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just follow up. How do we find where this 68 and 35? Is it through city staff, or is it through the app? How do we find these sidewalks to be needing? So what this is telling me that in District 1 there was 68 spots, sidewalk spots, whatever you would call them, that needed repair. 14 of those got fixed. How do we find out about those?
So this is all on a request basis. The 50/50 program is purely request based. So a resident or a property owner comes to the city and says, hey, I want a quote. I would like you to come look at my sidewalk for the repair. So that means that 68 people came and requested a quote. We went out and looked, and then 14 of them said, yes, please come back and fix it. So it wasn't staff actively designating areas, it was residents requesting us to come repair their sidewalk.
So where does the information from the app that talks about sidewalks goes to when there is a sidewalk that needs repair from the Salt Lake City mobile app?
Where does that go?
What is it going to?
I believe currently it was probably split between, any reports would have been split between streets and engineering, but we recently moved all of sidewalks into the streets division, so it is all put into the streets database and recorded, but that's not reflected in these graphs.
It all lives in our cartograph system now, so we have a general idea of sidewalk segments per block face, but specific points would need to be identified typically by property owners.
So there is not a proactive. So let's say I'm going into this because I submitted a lot of those myself, just per the request of the neighbor. They were like, this sidewalk is, so what it seems to me is that it's going to a place, but it's not the place that would potentially trigger the city to come reach out that neighbor and say, hey, we have a 50/50 program here. Can we split the cost of the materials? So is that possible to do when there is the information coming in to the city through that form, not necessarily from the property owner itself, but someone walking or, that submits its request, so we can add it to this? Because I bet there is a good 20 of those in my district that I submitted myself, so this should be a little bigger. So I want to find out if there is a way. Maybe those neighbors can afford it, maybe not, but it will be, I think, as far as data goes, I think that information would be useful for me.
So there's two different programs. So in engineering, we have kind of a proactive worst first program that based on that card. We've moved that since to streets because it is really a maintenance function, but that is continually going on. That we have funding for that to proactively go out and again, not really we don't know specific points, but we know block faces and we have that recorded and it's ongoing. And then there's the 50/50 program that's specific to constituents, pointing that out, and it'll both go into the same database.
And so the first program that JP spoke about is there's no cost sharing. The city maintains the whole cost. And I believe that some of those reports that are sent in through the app are added to that list, and it's evaluated by saying we have this much funding for this year. These are the ones that we've identified. These are the ones that citizens have identified and the residents, and where how far can the money go and which ones are we going to address? But then the 50-50 program is purely who wants to help pay for their own sidewalk, and then we do the quotes.
But it's based on the property owner requesting and reaching out to the city and doing some sort of submission to say, "Come look at my sidewalk, I need a quote."
Yeah, they make a phone call or they can submit an email and say, "I'd like to request a quote," and we then reach out.
And that could explain why, District 1 and 2 are some of the lowest, because, for obvious reasons. So seems to me that there might be some space there to improve on it. I think that this is fantastic, and but I think that income levels are something that I'm very interested in, and seeing if there is ways of finding additional funds to find to fix some more sidewalks, especially on some aging neighborhoods where we have a lot of elderly neighbors that need the sidewalks, but not only those. Everybody is using the sidewalks, so thank you for that, and I appreciate this.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think on that note, I would be supportive of exploring some type of graduated income-based percentage system where it's not just 50-50 for everybody in the city, but it depends on income level. And if it's it can verify a certain income level, then we would support a higher amount for the materials.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
That might require amending city. I remember looking at it, and I think the council many years ago made a determination about the 50-50 cost sharing. So I think that might have to be revisited and amended.
But so that's a follow-up item for us. And do you want us to follow up on the, or at least put it in our tickler file, the CDBG 100% funding in CDBG eligible areas?
Yeah, for sure.
Looking at when that program was discontinued and what it would take.
Yes.
To bring it back.
Yeah, I mean, especially because this is money that comes to us from the federal government, so I would love to make sure that it goes there. That's important to me. Yes, I have so many more questions about sidewalks now. Thank you so much.
I know, because I was wondering, District 4 has such a low number. Is that a function? So are HOAs responsible in these multifamily units or rental, when there's ground floor commercial? Who's liable for the sidewalk in those situations?
If it's a private street, then the owner of the private road would also be responsible for the sidewalk. But if it's a city road, then it follows the ordinance of the city, which says the responsibility is the adjacent property owner, but the city repairs some of the sidewalk.
So it's either the rental company or an HOA or...
But they wouldn't be in the 50-50 program. So an apartment building is probably not in the 50-50 program. A commercial space
It's only for residential, privately owned. Okay.
Yeah, I think it has to be a primary residence to be part of the 50-50 program.
Okay. Councilmember Young?
I was just going to say, in follow-up, another data point that I'd be interested in is probably seeing the comprehensive data between those projects that are funded at 100% as well as the 50-50, and then to see that breakdown by district, just to be able to get a better sense of kind of the comprehensive city services within that space, just to kind of compare.
Great. This is all just from the first table. I'm so glad we decided to stay and talk more. I hear there's another table coming for us.
The tables on the last page show the dollar amounts. So the previous ones we were looking at is the number of requests. This is the actual dollar amounts, since not every repair is going to be the same cost. I thought it'd be also helpful to see how much money from the program is going to the different districts. And my understanding is every year the budget is fully used. There's always more requests than available funding.
The wait list is quite long at times.
Sorry, why is the commercial program so high for G3? Is that
Sorry, can you say that again?
Under the commercial program graph, D3 is double. The next close, is that the church?
I believe that's probably perhaps because the commercial repairs may be larger, like the commercial building may have a larger section of sidewalk.
You also had twice as many jobs completed in D3 than others.
Sorry, what?
You had twice as many projects completed in D3 than others. You had 11 and D4 had, I think, 6.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that's weird is I would think that D4 would have the highest commercial program.
No, but you had 11 projects completed and D4 had 6.
Mm.
I
On
wonder if
commercial.
the hospital and everything has to do with that too.
I'm not sure if we know what the commercial program is.
From my understanding, it is part of the 50/50 program as well, and commercial property owners can also participate, but we can gain more specifics on the commercial program and the exact parameters of that program and report back on why the
Well,
funding.
I'm a real cheap date on the commercial program.
So we need to get clarity on that, and we can follow up.
We'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, and I think on this 50/50 program, like, I am in raw numbers less than half of my nearest low companion here, and we've got some really, really, really bad sidewalks in Rose Park. This is not representative of need at all.
That's kind of confusing too. That the bar on 2 is smaller than the bar on 1, but it's more money.
Yeah, and that was preheating. I just barely pushed the button because it just barely got done preheating. And it was sizzling during.
Okay.
I think it's because the bottom line is the number of jobs completed, but the dollar amount. So I might have had more jobs completed, but they added
They were
to,
smaller?
they added to
Okay.
a lower
Got
total
it.
cash
Okay.
expense.
And this data was also from 2020 until now, and as we all know, material costs are increasing, so it could be that perhaps one district had more jobs in the year when the material costs weren't quite as high, and another district had more in the last year and costs were higher.
And this
that
is-
could also be part.
And this
part
does
of it.
not include the windstorm work that we did.
No, because that would not have been part of the 50/50 program.
Yeah, that was separately funded in a budget amendment.
That's right. I think we can fixate on sidewalks now a little bit, guys. This is fun, a new fixation. Councilmember Mono, did we get you all your concerns?
I'm following. Yep. No, I have no additional questions. Thank you.
You have something, Councilmember Pui?
I have a concrete mixer.
Starting a new revenue stream here.
This might be a better question for urban forestry, but I have had residents in my district on the west side that are saying, they know that the larger trees are worse for sidewalks, but that asking about how they can get larger trees on the west side that won't cause that problem for sidewalks if they're like planted further out, or if we can put them in different places where they're not going to be so close.
I do know there is some technology out there. I think engineering has been exploring a few options, but urban forestry would certainly be the experts on some of that, unless you have anything to add.
No, that's a great question for urban forestry.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Ben, do you have anything else you want to share with us?
There was one other project-specific update to note. This is, the council had asked about project number 4, the transit capital for frequent transit routes. It is recommended for partial funding at $1.1 million. And that is the same funding level the council has funded. The council did 5 years in a row, did not fund last year, and it's now proposed to resume at that $1.1 million level. The question was, if there was additional funding of $400,000, what would it be used for? And part of the response from the Transportation Division was it could be held in a capital account as local matching funds to construct a North Temple West Side Transit Hub. There is some money secured for this from the city and UTA through grants. UTA has secured $1.4 million, and the city has secured $2.1 million from a Wasatch Front Regional Council grant. So that's $3.5 million total, which is great. But the total cost is estimated to be $10 million to $15 million. So this would be a major project on the North Temple corridor. It would need additional funding. I don't think the council has talked about this much before, which is why I highlight it. And that's why there's a policy question if you'd like additional information about plans for this significant project, or if you'd like to consider a briefing to talk about it more in depth.
Madam Chair, I think part of it is we probably should have a conversation with Wasatch Front Regional Council, their funding and their ability to offset that request or need, because they also have, overrun funds available. And we should just ask them the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll ask for, often with capital projects of this size, it takes multiple years to assemble the funding package, and a lot of it comes from federal and state sources, but the city often is on the hook for a local match.
Right.
So this year, CIP would not fund that local match, and there would likely be a request to the council in future years for just that.
Yeah.
But we'll ask for what those plans are. WFRC probably has this in their Unified Transportation Plan.
Council, any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Ben, thank you.
Thank you. The second public hearing for CIP is tonight.
Awesome. All right, council members, you should have a written briefing about the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund for Levity LLC. Please be sure to review that. As now we're on to our standing items. Report of the chair or vice chair. Councilmember Mono, do you have anything to report?
I do not. Thank you.
Announcements from the executive director.
The council meeting on September, I believe it's the 8th, is going to start at 2:30 instead of 2 o'clock. The reason for that is that the council has an appointment to have their photograph taken as a group. So 2:15, and that you'll receive more notice of that, but that's just FYI.
Thank you. All right, we do have a closed session. Do I have the purpose of this closed session is advice of counsel, if I'm not mistaken? Where's our?
Adam.
I'm getting a nod from someone who knows legal stuff, so I'm do I have a motion for that?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that we go into closed session for the purpose of receiving advice of counsel and reasonably imminent litigation. Advice of counsel.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Wharton, a second from Councilmember Pui. I'll roll call this vote. Councilmember Young?
Yes.
Councilmember Pui? Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That is unanimous with one absent. If you are not pertinent to this discussion, we'll see you later. We'll rejoin for the formal meeting at 7 p.m. Thank you.